Williams. I'm always so proud to be called to extend a welcome on occasions such as this at the University of Technology, Jamaica, Western Campus. Madam Chair, Dr. Audrey Giddens, and Lecturer, Caribbean School of Nursing, Mr. Carlton Henderson, Lecturer in the School of Maths and Statistics, Faculty of Science and Sport, and Chief Organizer of our Real Reckoning discussion series, our distinguished panel, Mr. Raymond Martin, Lecturer in the School of Natural and Applied Sciences, Faculty of Science and Sport, Mr. Evan Thompson, who I understand is online, Mr. Thompson, meteorologist and Principal Director of Meteorological Branch, members of staff who are present, our valued students, good morning and welcome to our Real Reckoning discussion series on the topic of climate change, preserving the planet for the next generation. Here at UTech Jamaica, a lot of work and effort goes into the teaching and learning and research that is presented and occurs in the classrooms, the lecture theatres, and our labs. We take great pride in our tradition of excellence that helps you, our students, to be on the cutting edge and hit the ground running as you launch or take your careers to the next level. Within the last week, we have had several events here at the Western Campus in quick succession. We have had our annual job fair, our nurses had their striping ceremony, and today, if the previous sessions are any indication, we're in for a very interesting, informative, exciting discussion. Learning does not only take place in the classroom, and I encourage each and every student to participate in events and activities such as these held on campus. You might think, tell me, what are some of you studying? A show of hands. Yes.
This is admin, production and operations management.
Production and operations management. Anybody else?
Nursing.
Nursing. Happy to have some nurses.
Marketing.
Marketing. How about this side? I see some young men over here. Some of you look like a glaze over and gone. Gone to sleep already. Finance and account. Anyway, guys, I have some news for you. I'm encouraging you to participate in events such as these. You may think I'm studying to be a nurse, or I'm studying to be a lawyer, or I'm going into accounting or banking. Climate change has nothing to do with me. But it does. Climate change poses a risk to every single household. Climate change will impact how we do business in Jamaica, regardless of the industry. Students, sometimes it is by understanding the bigger picture that you're able to position your careers and your businesses to have the longevity that you desire because you understand the risks and you are able to pivot accordingly. At this point, I will surrender to the experts on the panel for a more detailed discussion on this very topical issue of climate change. It was only last month, you will recall, Pier 1 and several other businesses along the western coastline got a real battering, unlike anything we have seen before outside of a hurricane or a tropical depression. So at this point, again, I say welcome, participate, and enjoy the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith, for those words of welcome. I think that climate change can be labeled a terrorist. When you look at the devastation which takes place after not even a hurricane, heavy rains, flooding, the damage done. I think it's a terrorist, especially to developing countries and small, vulnerable countries. When you take a country like my country, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 134 square miles, a wind just have to, the tail end of the wind, just have to touch my country and we will buckle. It is a terrorist. And I believe sooner or later it may be labeled as such because of the devastating effect and the damage, financial, social, I mean, psychological, the damage it leaves behind. It is a terrorist on us. At this time, I take the opportunity to introduce our panel. So, Evan will join us online. By the way, I am Dr. Audrey Giddens.
I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, just a moment, I forgot our coordinator for this event, the series of events, Mr. Henderson, School of Mathematics and um, Statistics, and he will tell us why.
Thank you, everybody. I will ask you why are you here? But I want to give you a big picture of what we're trying to achieve here, and I'm really heartened by you coming out to give your support and to participate in what we're trying to achieve. Good morning again, Jada. So there are many social, political, and environmental issues that are currently challenges our nation, and by extension our world. These includes, but not limited to, lottery scamming, crime and violence, substance abuse, vote buying, corruption, poor parenting, global warming, etc. Just to name a few. Alright? Real reckoning is a response to these challenges. It is a call to action by our young people to become more socially, politically, and environmentally aware of the pertinent issues that affect our shrinking global space. It aims to engage our young people in discussions in a data driven environment, free from misinformation and disinformation, guided by professionals like Mr. Martin here and Mr. Evan Thompson, with the relevant experience and expertise. It is hope that the Real Reckoning series will motivate our young people to become agents of change. They will join grassroots non-profit organizations or start their own organization, non-profit organization, and lead us into a desirable future for the 21st century. In our inaugural series, we have covered scamming, parenting, and now climate change, reaching young people here at the campus, the Western campus, surrounding high schools, and the Women's Center. In the upcoming academic year, 2024-2025, we will be covering topics such as gender and sexuality, and I look forward to seeing all of you and even some more. Um, Substance abuse by teenagers, and Jamaica's constitutional reform, among other topics. We also hope to expand our reach to more high schools in the West and eventually on a national level because we see this as a necessary part as in your development and in young people's development, and we want to get the word out to everyone. Right? The challenge, the challenges before us are great, and we will not achieve our goal of making Jamaica a place to live, to do business, and raise families until we get our young people to buy. We measure our success partly by the excitement we are able to generate in the minds of our young people, but primarily the number of young people who will eventually take up leadership roles in their households and in their communities. On, on the topic of today, climate change is the greatest threat that the planet faces in the 21st century. Yet, many of our young people are unaware, confused about the human role or contribution towards global warming and the greenhouse gases, or how they can reduce their carbon footprint. This is due in part to climate deniers, the spread of conspiracy theories, through misinformation and disinformation via social media news. We aim to dispel these myths today and set the record straight with our expert presenters. Thanks for coming, and we look forward to your participation in the question and answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henderson. So our panel will present, and then you will ask all the questions thereafter. Mr. Raymond Martins, seated up. For joining us online, and you will be our first presenter, Mr. Evan G. Thompson.
So do I go ahead?
Now, Mr. Thompson is currently the Principal Director of the Meteorological Services Branch in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. He has been a professional meteorologist for over 30 years since receiving his undergraduate degree from the Cape Hill campus of the University of the West Indies in Barbados. Mr. Thompson became the head of Jamaica's Meteorological Service in 2016. In that capacity, he oversees operations of the organization's weather services, where the monitoring of meteorological condition is done at the surface and in the upper atmosphere, and climate services, where a database of Jamaica's climate is maintained. Among his chief roles is that of severe weather or hurricane forecaster, where he manages the process of forecasting and warming of major hydrometeorological hazards for Jamaica, along with the communication on these hazards to the political directorate and the general public. Evan Thompson was previously known as a senior broadcast meteorologist on the main local television station primetime news program, where he served for over 17 years. In 2016, Mr. Thompson was appointed the permanent representative of Jamaica to the World Meteorological Organization, a specialized agency of the United Nations. He was later, in 2021, elected for a 4-year term as president of its regional association of member states in North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. And he currently serves voluntarily in that position. In that capacity, he sits on the executive council of the WMO and oversees several committees and expert teams within the region, including the highly respected Hurricane Committee, which has the responsibility for the naming of tropical storms and hurricanes and the coordination of tropical cyclones activity for the Atlantic Basin. Evan Thompson is also very involved in his church and his former high school, occupying senior leadership roles. He's also a family man, married with 2 sons. Welcome to Evan.
Thank you. Um, I am at such a huge disadvantage not being able to see all of you, but I hope you're able to see me, and I hope you're also able to hear me clearly. Can you give me some indication? All right. It is my pleasure to be with you, but I must apologize for not being there in person. I really had wanted to be there, but the schedule just was not allowing it, and the preparation time and getting there, it just was not really able to be accommodated at this time. So unfortunately, I'm not there in Montego Bay, but I am happy to be joining you here on this platform. Um, I am going to be sharing some information with you. I'm just a little bit scared, however, that I might be infringing on Mr. Martin's territory. I'm not too sure, where we will um, overlap in terms of some of the things that we will share. But I will go ahead anyway and let's share what I have. Hopefully, I will not infringe too much. Um, but let me share my presentation. I'm hoping that you'll be able to see what I share here. Let me find it and make sure that it is available to you. Okay, I hope you're able to see that. Let me get it to the. Are you able to see that presentation?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Okay, great. All right, so we're here, and as was mentioned before, we're here talking about climate change, preserving the planet for the next generation. And I'm saying we are really in unusual times. It's times that probably we had not seen many many years ago. And sometimes we are thrown some difficult situations, but we just have to make do with what we have, the resources we have, and see how we can deal with these situations. Um, my being here in Kingston while you're in Montego Bay is one of those things, but of course, climate change is another one of these things, which is of a much greater magnitude that we'll be talking about today. One of those things that we just have to deal with. Now, when I was growing up in school, we were always taught what the weather is and what climate is. The weather being the state of the atmosphere at any point in time and at any point in space. And so we've gone about considering, how we look at day-to-day weather conditions, and we describe them in certain ways. And it was always felt that weather changes quite a lot, and over a period of a long-term period, when we amalgamate the conditions of the weather, we then consider that climate, general pattern of weather conditions for a region over a long period of time. So we talk about a general pattern, looking at the various changes that take place from time to time with regard to the weather. But we were always told while I was going to school that the climate doesn't change, it's the weather that changes. But then, as I have come to understand at this point in time, there is a changing of the climate. And the climate, first of all, we talk about climate variability, which really is a temporary change, and it is periodic. From time to time, changes occur with our climate. Things happen that are somewhat unusual. We have set patterns, but then some things change those patterns from time to time. And so we realize that the climate does change, but it will always come back to center. So it would be a temporary change, and it is period, but it is temporary. So it reverts to what is the normal climate over time. But now we're understanding that there is another kind of change that is taking place. It's not a variability in the climate, but it is a change in the climate where the start point is change. And we're moving to a new norm where climate conditions are concerned. And that is a statistically significant variation in either the main state of the climate or in the variability. And it persists for an extended period. Um, it may be decades, it may be longer, it might be forever if nothing is done to change that cycle or that pattern and cause us to revert to what we were accustomed to in previous years. So we have learned that it's not just the weather that changes. Climate changes. It changes in a temporary way, but there is also a more permanent change that takes place that we refer to as climate change. Now, looking at Jamaica's climate, I mean, we talk about the bimodal pattern of our rainfall in particular. Of course, rainfall is not the only thing that distinguishes our climate because of temperature also has a lot to do with it. We're in a tropical part of the globe, and so we experience tropical weather. We experience certain temperatures that are not experienced at the poles, and or weather is less, or temperatures are less variable than they are in temperate regions or farther from the equator. Now, what we're looking at here now in terms of this pattern is really the rainfall pattern, where we are now in the month of March, and March would normally signify where we have the least amount of rainfall in any given year. Looking at the pattern of rainfall over the period of 30 years from 1971 to 2000, this is what I'm showing you here. So March would normally show the should I say the peak of the dry season, or really the trough of that dry season that we are experiencing. At this time, we are in the dry season, and this is usually the time when you have the least amount of rainfall. But after we move from March, we have an increase in April, and then we move to a peak that would occur in May. That is really what we call our secondary peak of rainfall. And then the primary peak occurs in October, as you can see on this chart, with another low occurring in July. So the period between the May and the October would normally be referred to as our rainfall season, could you call it that? I mean, as it goes through the summer. But it does have a trough in the middle in July. And then we have the real primary peak that occurs in October, where we get the most rainfall. And then it falls again as we move into the dry season that continues until March or April. So that's what our usual pattern of climate is. We recognize, however, in Jamaica that some of this is changing. We are actually putting together, as we speak, some of that detail. And I understand that in just a few weeks, we will have what is our latest climatological mean or normal, which would move from 1991 to 2020. So that is what we're looking to develop at this point in time. And we are already seeing a trend where a lot of these variables are changing. Rainfall patterns are changing. We'll see the peaks and troughs in a little bit different way than we've seen it in the past. And we're also seeing that there are changes that are taking place with respect to temperature. I just wanted to point out some of what we've been seeing in terms of temperature, and this is prior. Now, this is looking at the previous normals, as I mentioned, the 71 to 2000, because the next one hasn't been released yet. But this is what the temperatures in Kingston and Montego Bay normally look like, where you have it increasing from January, going up to about July and August, and then lowering. Of course, we know in the summer period we have our highest temperatures, and that would be in the June, July, August period, and then we move down into December and January, where temperatures are lowest, and it is the same for much of the country, and of course, Montego Bay just as much as in Kingston. When we look at the rainfall patterns, we're seeing there is a mean that was established. We saw in 2016, in 2017, 18, 19. But then there is the 30-year average that you see in bolder green line here. That is really, what we see as our mean over time. But some of these are the years as we move through. So you see it varies in relation to the mean as we move along through the year. But the mean rainfall pattern is what we showed with the peaks that we showed in the previous slide, and that's the green bolder line that we're seeing on this chart. So we recognize that there is climate change taking place. We know that there are a number of causes. There are reasons why there is a change in the climate. I presume that will be discussed a little bit more by Mr. Martin, because we didn't consult. We don't know what each other is going to be speaking exactly about. But the causes of climate change, we'll take a brief look at that. But then there are the effects. There are the things that cause it, but then there are the effects that will take place or that have been taking place because of that change in the climate. And then what is the evidence that we see of this change? Yes, the change is happening. The effects are taking place. But what is the evidence that we have on the ground? And there are some examples of that as well. So looking first up at the cause, here we see on the left-hand side of our screen, the natural greenhouse effect. You have a greenhouse effect that takes place that keeps us warm, generally, in our atmosphere. And so we would expect the solar radiation to come in. We expect that the Earth is going to be warm, but we also expect that it will radiate some of the heat into the atmosphere, and so there is heat that is occurring in our atmosphere that is keeping us warm. Some of it, however, does escape into space, but there is that cushion area around the Earth that constitutes our atmosphere. But on the right hand side of our picture, we see where a lot of human induced climate change or greenhouse effect is taking place. That's where climate change comes in, because we are emitting a lot of chemicals, a lot of gases into the atmosphere. That is changing the composition of the atmosphere, and it is reducing what is actually being able to escape from the atmosphere. So we're seeing a lot of trapping of air, of warm air within the atmospheric region, and that is causing the global warming to take place, and that is what is moving toward climate change. So apart from the warming, we're seeing that other variables of climate are also being impacted, and that is occurring right across the globe. In some areas, we're seeing more dramatic impacts, while others are quite less dramatic. So that is what has been taking place. You have the solar radiation coming in, quite a bit coming in. Maybe more is coming in because, of course, there's ozone depletion. And so with that coming in, and then with the radiation of all these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, there's that trapping of the heat. So we're getting all those effects that we mentioned earlier. So the greenhouse effect is what is taking place. So we're seeing an increase in extreme weather events. We're seeing increased rainfall intensity. All of these are impacts that we expected from climate change, and we are actually seeing much of that take place in our atmosphere at this time. Increased rainfall intensity, there are landslides that are taking place because of the flooding events. We're also seeing increases in air temperature. We're seeing hotter days. We're experiencing warmer nights. We have health concerns, vector-borne diseases, and that is because of some of the changes in temperature that we're also seeing water resources being impacted. We're seeing loss of livelihoods and ecosystem services. Sea level is rising, of course, because of the melting of the ice caps and the glaciers in polar regions, and that is increasing the volume of water in the atmosphere, and that, of course, leads to an increase in sea surface temperatures. There's saline intrusion because with that increase in sea surface temperatures, there's more salt water being infiltrated into our aquifers, and so the underground water is being impacted by salty water. Coastal inundation with that sea level rise. Sea surface temperatures are also increasing. There's water shortage, more frequent droughts because we have those longer dry periods. But with the rainfall episodes, they are usually more intense. We have been experiencing that, but it was also projected in climate change based on what we are expecting the atmosphere, how it is expected to change. So lots of these changes are taking place in our atmosphere. We've seen those impacts. In Jamaica, there are very many experiences of coastal erosion because of that sea level rise that we spoke about. We're hearing our fishermen speak about some of the beaches being lost, not just the fishers, but also other residents, who live in coastal areas will speak about the loss of those coastal areas because of the sea level rise. And so we're losing some of our beach. We're seeing more of the erosion. And there are so many other impacts that we see on the ground. There's talk about infiltration of the aquifers with salt water from the sea, and all that is impacting us even here in Jamaica. There are a number of reports that have been produced. More and more we are monitoring what is taking place in our climate. And we are experiencing some of these changes locally, but we're also seeing reports that are being produced in a more global context. So I was taking a look at the global climate for 2022, state of the global climate, and some of the highlights that came out of this report. One of them is that the global mean temperature in 2022 was 1.15 above the 1850 to 1900 average. This we talk about as the industrial age, pre-industrial age. And so what we are seeing is that we are already seeing an increase of over 1.1 degrees. It's about 1.2 degrees almost that we're seeing an increase over those levels between 1850 and 1900. The years 2015 and 2022 were that's 2015 to 2022, and that continued in 2023, were the warmest years on record. The year 2023, actually, in an update to this, has now been um, declared to be the warmest year on record. And every month since about June or July, we've been hearing that that month has broken the record for the month in global records. So the last June was the warmest June, July was the warmest July, and it continued right through the year. And again, now starting in 2024, we've already heard that January and February are the warmest that we've ever experienced, warmer than it was last year and the year before, which were already breaking records. So we are experiencing that global warming that is taking place, and of course the climate change that is characteristic of that. So the concentrations also, second point here, concentrations of three main greenhouse gases, those are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, reached record highs in 2021. And this was in the 22 report. The annual increase in methane concentration was the highest on record. Real-time data from specific locations show that levels of greenhouse gases continued to rise in 2020. And that was the concern of all. And you may have heard about the Conference of the Parties from the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The latest session that was held last year also, this is more discussion that is taking place about where we have reached with respect to the global climate and what needs to be done. So countries are being encouraged to do what they can to reduce those concentrations of the gases that are disastrous to our climate and that are greenhouse gases. About 90% of the energy trapped in the climate by greenhouse gases goes into the ocean. We have warmer oceans that are more accepting of these gases being absorbed, and so we're seeing more acidic waters also. Those are being experienced in our seas and the oceans. Continuing in the report, it spoke about despite continuing La Nina conditions, the ocean surface experienced one marine heat wave in 2022. And last year we heard about the waters again continuing to be exceeding the expectations with heat and how it is causing disasters with respect to the ecosystems actually. Global means that sea level continue to rise. We see in the hydrological year that is represented in this report, a set of reference glaciers with long-term observations experienced mass balance that reached minus 1.18 meters water equivalent. And this loss is larger than the average over the last decade. So we're seeing huge losses to the glaciers and, of course, increased water volume in our oceans. Mention was made of East Africa where the rainfall was below average in 5 consecutive wet seasons. We heard about record-breaking rain in July and August, especially and leading to extensive flooding that was in the Pakistan area. Numbers of deaths and costs associated with that. Record-breaking heat waves affecting China and Europe. All this was in 2022, and in 2023 there was not much change because we continued to hear about all these excesses and all the things that were happening to change our global climate. In Jamaica also, we conduct a state of the Jamaican climate. It's not done in the Meteorological Service, it's done by our academia, and that is usually published as soon as those are done. The latest one I had is the one in 2021, And that also spoke about some changes taking place in the Jamaican context with respect to temperature, where maximum, mean, and minimum temperatures showing an upward trend. There's average minimum temperatures increasing faster than the maximum temperatures, and the mean temperatures increasing at a rate of 0.008 degrees per year. Of course, it might look like very little, but minimal changes in temperature have spin-off greater changes in the global climate. There are increases in temperature that are consistent with the global rates that was determined in our the State of Jamaican Climate Report. The daily temperature range has also decreased. So there is a shorter space, or the distance between the morning temperatures and the night temperatures. That temperature change is really decreasing. Rainfall, we're also seeing changes in rainfall, significant year-to-year variability due to the influences of like the El Nino phenomenon. And we know that many of us would know that the El Nino phenomenon was very active last year. It reached a peak and is now on the downscale, moving toward neutral conditions. So El Nino also contributed to the increased temperatures and even the increase, well, in our area, it's really a decrease in the rainfall activity. So it increased the likelihood of drought, and we experienced some very intense drought conditions even at the beginning of last year. Last year, this time, we were in those drought conditions. There is an insignificant upward trend with rainfall. So it's not seen that there is any significant change in the positives with respect to rainfall on the year level. Only in episodes we are seeing where there is heavier rainfall in episodes, in particular downpours. There's a strong decadal trend with wet anomalies in the 60s, early 80s, late 1990s, and the mid to late 2000s, where there's a dry anomaly that was in the late 70s, mid and late 80s, and post 2010. So there are just some signals that were detected in that report. It spoke about rainfall zones, but I'm going to move forward to the sea levels. An average regional rate of increase was detected between 50 and 2009, and the extent of it is seen here up to about 1.8 plus or minus millimeter per year seen during that period, and a higher average rate of increase in later years, going up to 2010, between 1993 and 2010. The Caribbean sea level changes are near the global mean, and we're hearing global sea level changes are where there is an increase. The sea level range at Port Royal was about 1.66 millimeter per year. That detected by sensors in that area. So we've seen where there is evidence being seen in the Jamaican context of changes. Hurricanes, increase in categories 4 and 5, hurricanes in our region, rainfall intensity, associated peak wind intensities, mean rainfall for the same period. Majority of storms or hurricanes impacted Jamaica are categories 3 and 4, and this is over a period of time, but in recent years. So those changes are also being seen. Now, much of the information that we're getting, whether in the global context or in the Jamaica context, is reported on by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Because although climate change has taken on a kind of different image globally, it's more seen as not so much looking at the data and what is happening to the actual climate, but more in terms of how it is impacting life, even at the social level. That's how it is being looked at. And of course, it's seen as a big way of moving money around. And so a lot of money is being pumped into the climate change agenda, that we're looking at. But we always have to look back at the science and what is really seen, what is the evidence on the ground of the changes that are taking place. So the IPCC is responsible for that scientific investigation and reporting, and this is done at those same COP meetings that I mentioned earlier, the Conference of the Parties. So it looks at, is the United Nations, the IPCC is the United Nations body for assessing the science related to climate change. The IPCC provides regular assessments of scientific basis of climate change, the impact and future risks, and the options for adaptation and mitigation. And the IPCC's findings um, from the assessment informs the UNFCCC negotiations process, and that's where the COP comes in. I should point out that the focal point for the IPCC in Jamaica is actually located in the Meteorological Service. Mrs. Jacqueline Spence Hemmings, who is the head of our climate services section, she is actually the focal point where climate change matters are concerned for reporting to the IPCC. So there is a call to action, really. We see these changes taking place. We see that it is affecting us. We see that it is not necessarily a positive thing for many of us in terms of how it is impacting our lives. And so it is important that we see what we can do to address the situation. And that's where we are now. How does the world look in terms of mitigation activities? But also, how do we adapt what we are doing to deal with some of these changes that are taking place? So the IPCC report shows that we're already committed to a certain level of climate change, and we will be dealing with the effects for that for a long time to come. The momentum has already been built. Even if we stop emitting these disastrous gases into the atmosphere today, there will be a continuing effect of climate change for a period of time before we are able to stabilize our climate, just because of the residual effect of what is already taking place, caused by human-induced climate change, what we are doing in our community. So climate-related risks for natural and human systems are higher for global warming of 1.5 degrees than at present, but lower than at 2 degrees. Now, there was a effort in our region and across the world for us to try to limit our changes in temperature to 1.5 degrees above the industrial levels that we spoke of earlier, going up to 1900. And we're already at 1.2. 1.5 is not far off. Um, 2 degrees was what was kind of seen as a target, but we recognize that 1.5 will already be developed in terms of the impact of climate change in our context. And so they will help in that drop to keep it below 1.5. Of course, that is in jeopardy at this time based on how things have been changing. So these risks depend on the magnitude and rate of warming, the geographic location, levels of development and vulnerability, and on the choice and implementation of adaptation and mitigation options. So there's the call to action. Action is required now to adapt to the changes that are already occurring and that will continue to occur. But we also have a call to action that is required as we seek to achieve our goal nationally and even the wider goal in terms of travel across the whole world to mitigate again and further global. So that was my presentation this morning. I hope it has been useful to you and I hope it opened some eyes to some of the things that we may see. But we'll shortly be releasing a new climate normal for Jamaica in another within this year. We're hoping to do that, at least for the rainfall and the parameters, to see how those have changed in the past 30 years and how that relates to the previous 30-year period that we have been looking at going.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. That was an exceedingly insightful presentation, and I can tell you from my point of view, there were new learnings today. But as they say, every day is a learning day. Thank you very much. And now we'll have our second presenter. I hope you have been jotting down your questions. Okay. I'm sitting under the vent, so just trigger my sinus. Someone. Okay. Mr. Raymond Martin, sir, you have a top challenge?
Thank you.
He is a graduate of the University of the West Indies and holds an MPhil in zoology with specialization in entomology. He joined the UTEC staff in September on September 1st, 2001. He's a lecturer of environmental studies. He has served as head of the Division of Biological Sciences and Environmental Science. He developed the syllabus for the IPCC, which is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Guidelines for Agriculture greenhouse gas inventories and accounting, and the farming system for livelihood sustainability module, and he was instrumental in the development of the online environmental studies module. He is a former chairman of the Jamaica Organic Movement. He is a trained inspector for organic crop production and livestock production. He was the technical secretary for the committee which developed the CARICOM Code of Practice for Organic Produce. He was project manager for the Environmental Foundation of Jamaica funded project, which is the Sustainable Agroforestry Systems Supporting Organic Beekeeping and Alternative Livelihood, and the Global Environmental Facility Small Grants Program funded project, which is Sustainable Ecosystem Management to support agroforestry, agrotourism, and community development in vulnerable communities in Portland and State Common. Ladies and gentlemen, present your.
So thank you very much. Dr. Gittins, Mr. Smith, Mr. Henderson, Mr. Dawson, members of the audience, thank you for having me. I hear that there are members of the debating society here. Any debaters here? No debater? No? Not one debater? Ah, okay. So I decided I was going to do this like a debate. So let us see how it goes. So climate change. So what I'm doing, a threat to life on Earth or fake news. So join with me. So we're gonna look at the climate change debate. We're gonna look at evidence for climate change. We're gonna look at history. We won't spend any time on that because Mr. Thompson did that quite well. Who is responsible for climate change? What are some of the effects? Mr. Thompson did a lot of that, but I'm going to look at from a different perspective because I'm a biology person and responses to climate change. All right, so what's climate change? Changing weather patterns, change the atmosphere, destruction of the atmosphere. So you all think that climate change is happening?
Yes. Yeah.
Let's hear the first debater. Climate change is a myth.
No.
Climate cycles are quite normal. You heard about climate variability. Mr. Thompson spoke about climate variability. Yeah, you just go up and down and yeah, so. And plus the climate has changed before. So it's no big thing. Let's not worry about it. Alright, so here's the next presenter. It's not a myth. There are indeed natural cycles. For instance, remember Mr. Thompson spoke about El Nino and La Nina. That is natural cycles occur. And so this is what's happening right now. This is the latest projection, February 2024. And what they're expecting is that we're currently in an El Nino, which is a warming, and it's projected in April to switch to neutral, and then it will go into a La Nina. La Nina is colder. So we have these natural patterns. Yeah, we have these natural patterns. And so when they say that they're natural cycles, yes, they're natural cycles. But the Earth, the Earth also fluctuates between cold periods, known as ice ages. So we have these 100,000 year fluctuations that do occur. But look at what today's warming is a part of any natural cycle. The Earth is currently at its hottest For what? 12,000 years, perhaps even 125,000 years. And one of the other challenges is the rate of warming is extremely rapid. So what is responsible for climate change? Cutting down the trees and greenhouse gases. Look at what the first indicator says. The sun is getting hotter. So according to him, the sun is getting hotter and therefore Earth is getting warmer. Next indicator comes up and says, the sun is not getting hotter. In fact, the sun's energy has been decreasing. It has actually been decreasing since the 1980s. And when you examine it, the warmest part of the Earth's atmosphere is the troposphere where we live. In fact, the outer atmosphere is actually getting cooler.
So why was it so hot in 2022?
Global warming is not a natural phenomenon. So, are you supporting the first and second things? So, we looked at, I just want to show you, why is it getting hotter? So, greenhouse gases, what is really happening is that we're emitting these gases into the atmosphere. So, the sun's rays pass through and it warms the earth. But guess what? Because of these gases being present, they trap heat. That's why it's getting warmer. Because there's more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from the burning of fossil fuel to trap the heat. So what we have is a continuous rise in temperature. Last year was the warmest year. Last year was, and this year is probably expected to be.
This year is hotter.
It's expected to be, yes, it already started out being hotter. Can you imagine winter, the winter months, February, going into March, and it was hot like summer. So we're experiencing these changes. And of course, carbon dioxide contributes about 55% to the warming and methane about 30%. So these are the two main greenhouse gases. So you mentioned that it's caused by burning of fossil fuels, CFCs, chlorofluorocarbon. No, tell me something. What's the link between ozone depletion and global warming?
So, the ozone is like the protector of the earth in a sense, protect
It prevents ultraviolet rays, restrict the amount of ultraviolet rays coming in, yes.
So now, when certain things happen, like, the harmful things where they go on, the greenhouse gases, I guess all of that is like chipping away the ozone layer. To me,
No.
me wrong?
Greenhouse gases do not affect the ozone.
Okay, alright.
So carbon dioxide does not affect the ozone.
Okay, but the things that affect the ozone layer are chipping it away. So like the sun is coming to us more directly, and we don't have a barrier between us and the sun, not as strong enough.
So CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, refrigerated aerosol spray, that is reducing the amount of ozone. And as Thompson said, that there's more radiation coming in because of the depletion of the ozone layer. So that might be increasing the whole warming effect. CFC itself, those are also greenhouse gases. But here's the interesting thing. Ozone is a greenhouse gas. So reducing the ozone is actually reducing. But adding CFC is increasing. But they expect that the net effect is really an increase due to it. So it's not that greenhouse gases cause ozone depletion. But there is a relationship between the two. There is a relationship. So global warming is the overall warming of the planet due to the greenhouse effect. And we said was the trapping of heat by gases. So it's human-induced we're talking about. Because there is water vapor in the atmosphere. So naturally present, and that has resulted in Earth being warm enough to support life. What's happening is that we are increasing the amount of greenhouse gases, which is causing the warming to increase. And it's increasing at such a rapid rate, it's affecting climate. And it's affecting the whole way the Earth system, all the systems are being impacted because of it. So we have severe droughts, we have extreme flooding. Because the interesting thing, is that we all know the water cycle. when the sun's rays hit the earth or water on the water evaporates. And then as it gets goes up in the atmosphere, it cools and you have precipitation. It goes into the atmosphere, it's too warm. So what it do? It moves further north or south. And so we have changes in rainfall. Some areas don't get any rain anymore because of that. And this is impacting, we spoke about the impact. First, one of the solutions to climate change is renewable energy, such as hydropower. But rivers are drying up. So there are countries that are dependent on rivers for hydroelectricity. I know Africa in particular had invested heavily in hydroelectricity. Now they're having a problem. They don't have enough water and they don't have enough electricity. So they have a double challenge going on. All right, so let's see. Who should fix the problem?
Us.
We are responsible. Let's hear what the man said. Developed countries, of course. They're the ones who are burning most fossil fuels. So the EU and the US, they are the ones. All right, here's the next one. What he said. This is really a great debate. You know that China, United States, India, the 27 countries of the EU, Russia, and Brazil were the sixth world largest greenhouse gas emitters in 2022. They account for 50% of the global population, 61% of global gross domestic product, 63% of global fossil fuel consumption, and 62% of greenhouse gas emissions. Can you imagine? Is China a developed country? Is India a developed country? All right. China is interested in the debate because China insists on being classified as a developing state. Why do you think so? There are incentives to being a developed nation, right? So I know why side goes to the incentives, right? So China refuses to be classified as developed because there are incentives to be a developing country. So even though they have mega projects and they're all over the world helping different countries with projects, they consider themselves developing. India is developing. So what you find is that the top two, India and China, in terms of the developing nation, they have been moving ahead with their development, and that has been on the back of fossil fuel use. And so it's not just the US and the EU. We also have emerging economies. And there's this big debate where every time they go to a climate change meeting, it's like, okay, developing countries developed countries must fix it. Developed countries say, but hello, China, India, you need to do something about it too. And so there's this back and forth between the whole thing. So there are these conventions. We have the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And you'd have seen where this is the body that does most of the climate studies and so on. There's a Paris Agreement in 2015. And sorry, this is too small, but under this, countries are supposed to do projections on their greenhouse gas emissions. So they do these projections and they file them. So Jamaica has their nationally determined contributions. So they determine their contribution to emissions. So we are supposed to be looking at that. And let's look at another question. Is it possible for countries to do without fossil fuels and reduce emissions? Renewable sources are way too expensive. And they take up too much space. Look how much solar panel. You know how much land we're going to need for solar panel? And you know how much land we're going to need for wind turbines and all these things? All right, here's the next one.
Yeah.
In 2022, China, the United States, and India increased their emissions. Right? So we have an increase. But the EU 27 countries, the 27 countries of the EU reduce their emissions. How did they reduce their emissions? So they emitted 8% less carbon. Yep. 8% less carbon dioxide. And it's the lowest level in 60 years. And this graph, you notice that use increase in the 2000s, but it has actually gone down to the lowest since 1963, and it's projected to get lower. So it is possible. And the decreases have occurred because of increased investment in renewable energy plants. And the cost for renewable energy is going down. It's actually going down due to continuing technology improvements. So no, it's not true that it is increasing. It is decreasing. So new onshore wind and solar projects cost roughly 40% less than coal or gas plants. Brazil, solar installations are expected to drop. They're driven by small-scale plants of 5 megawatts or less. So Brazil is now the world's third largest solar market. This was in 2023. Behind by China, which is emitting the most, they're also running ahead with renewable energy. So eventually you're going to find that even China's emissions are going to start to fall as it kicks in. The impacts of climate change, you know the impacts already. Here's what the young man said. Climate change is nothing to worry about. Don't you like going surfing when the waves are high? The other day when we had all these waves and yes, Pier 1 was destroyed, but didn't you have fun in the surf? Yes. It's very crazy to do it anyway. So we're gonna have higher temperatures. Of course, this higher sea temperatures will drive stronger, more powerful hurricanes, frequent floods and droughts, bushfires, rising sea levels. So we have all of these as issues. What can we do? Nothing. The earth will eventually fix itself. There's no great harm. Remember we talked about the surfing? Hello, you can just enjoy life, man. Don't worry yourself. So there are two ways to address it. You have climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. Mitigation reduces greenhouse gas levels. Adaptation really builds resilience. So this is what's going to happen. Let us work around it to see how we can ensure that nothing bad happens. Reduce the damage. Find a way to reduce it. So we can look at ways to mitigate. So there is switching to renewable energy, conserving, planting trees. In terms of adaptation, so remember we said that if we're going to have droughts, then how you plan to prepare for a drought. Then of course water harvesting systems. The Ministry of you notice that we now have the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, and you know what the next tag on to the ministry is? Mining. They want to turn those mined out pits into water harvesting. Yeah, into reservoirs. And that is adaptation. So they want to turn these land into agriculture. That's what they put it on the umbrella. We can also relocate, right? We can move to somewhere else. Let's look at some case studies. And let's look at from the species perspective. So warming temperatures, in response, that's going to change habitats, right? Corals are bleaching. So species can migrate, or they can adapt, or they can go extinct. Species are actually going extinct as we speak. So these are happening. Coral bleaching. So let's hear from the coral reefs. So fish populations are being impacted. Not only are fish populations being impacted, but fishing and tourism, which are dependent on it, are also being impacted. The strong waves that we had the other day did serious damage. Serious damage to our infrastructure. Higher sea temperatures. You know that we have fish that is too warm for them, so they're migrating further north? Yep. Long-haired sea turtles. Do you know that the sex of turtles is dependent by temperature? So more turtles will be female because as the temperature increases, they're going to turn female. How that that's happening to human beings? Pretty great. The guys want to get butterflies. No one at the time, something butterfly. You know, it's only found in hot country and in the Blue Trumper Mountains because of the high humidity. So as the area dries out, they will not be able to survive. Concrete country, tree frogs live in the water and bromeliads, right? Bromeliads are like pine. Yes, you know, like the pineapple. Eh, so they live inside the hollow in the water. If it gets drier, they have no habitat. So we're gonna have that effect. Birds migrate. Now this is one of the biggest challenges. Bird migration is birds are confused. So they're migrating too early because it's not warm enough to migrate. But when they reach when they reach further north, they find hold a second. But snow's still on the ground. What's going on here? It was warm very hot in Jamaica when I left. No one come back home and finds the snow still on the ground. What is going on?
The deforestation is also caught.
Yes. And combined with human impact.
What's that to those birds? That's not true,
He died. He died. Because they can't get enough food. So they're migrating, my whole migration triggers are messed up. And it is great. Bushfires are increasing. Look at a map of wildfires worldwide and you find that somewhere is on fire. I think somewhere in Central America there's a circle of fire going on right now. But all around the world we have bushfires, right left and center. And so our forest or trees are supposed to be capturing carbon dioxide, but they're all going up in fire. The largest one of the largest captures of carbon dioxide in the Tiger region, where you have all these coniferous forests. Those are on fire. Every year losing thousands of we'll talk about this of pieces of land. Thousands of acres are going up in flames. And it's fascinating. Sea level rise mentioned that about it's affecting, causing more flooding. So of course we know crocodiles. Crocodiles, we have decided to build our homes where crocodiles live. So the crocodiles are migrating into people's homes because the areas are flooded. Yeah, we have water water. We just walk into the yard and get a president. No problem. Hurricanes, we know the effects of that. And it's an interesting thing with mangroves. It's found that mangroves and coral reefs are moving further north in response to the changes that are happening. So we know Hurricane Gilbert. Here's an interesting thing. As it gets warmer, some species that cannot tolerate warm conditions are being replaced by warm tolerant species. So destruction of some of our native trees after a hurricane, they never return because they're replaced by invasive species. So we have that changing. So we're losing. Biodiversity is changing. So the impact on ecosystem is increasing the effects of climate change. Our coral reefs, for example, they don't have time to adjust because we are overloading the system with sewage, solid waste. Diseases are increasing in the population. So the systems are not strong enough. It's the same thing with a human being. If you are stressed, not sleeping, you are not able to withstand the pressures of life. Some of you every 5 minutes you're ill. You're not going to sleep. Get on a rest. Stop stressing yourself over everything. Yes, I know exam coming up. What's enough stress over it? Just do the required work. So the same thing. Our natural ecosystems would be able to adjust and adapt, but we are destroying them. There are too many too much stressors to the system. All right, so what's the response to the Jamaican government? What do you think the first presenter will say? Nothing. Not a thing. Pure thought and promises. All right, let's look at some level of evidence. This is really true. So, Jamaica updated its nationally determined contribution. So remember, each country is supposed to, under the Paris Agreement, submit their emissions. So Jamaica is actually putting together a national adaptation plan. And remember, Vision 2030, Goal 4 is Jamaica as a healthy natural environment. And an outcome of that is that hazard risk reduction and adaptation to climate change. So climate adaptation is built into Jamaica's Vision 2030. So we have a mitigation policy. We have the whole plan to reduce that. Recently, the Minister of Finance announced that commencing July 1, 2024, NHT contributors will be able to access loan to invest in solar panels, batteries, solar water heaters, etc. You can get up to 1.5 million as a single, but with joint you can get up to $3 million. So that is present. There's also a 360 million project that was funded by the British. There's an organization they call the Blue Carbon Fund, the UK Blue Carbon Fund. They want to restore more than 1,000 hectares of degraded mangrove forests. This should be completed in 2026. Jamaica also had a tree planting initiative to plant 1 tree per individual. So 3 million trees were to be planted, and I think we're now at the 3 million. We're planted 3 million trees. But here's the thing about tree planting: how much of them still alive?
And the type of trees.
I was involved in a project to plant trees. You plant the trees and there's a severe drought. They die.
You know,
So-
I met some. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was saying I met some of the blue carbon founders because they had like a forum at the hotel that I work. Yeah, so we had to know a lot about blue carbon, and in that work we have to practice the sustainability rules at the second place.
Excellent. So it's not a myth, right? It's not a myth.
It's true.
It's true because you have experienced that these things are happening. You see, I'm not making up stories. So there's evidence. So we have different initiatives. So we have protected areas in the corporate country. So you know that communities can access funding, whether it be through the Global Environment Fund, Small Grants Program, or through the or from the EFJ, Environmental Foundation of Jamaica. So if you have a project, you can access funding to do work. So this in Sawyers, they have actually put up their own automatic weather station, and they are doing beekeeping and reforestation and project management. So there is money. So when we talk about money being too expensive, there are grants that persons can access to put these in place. And here we have another community intervention where they're doing a nursery in the corporate country. We have programs which are helping communities. This is up in the Blue and Jumper Mountain, where they're helping them with the fire brigade. They're training members in how to set up fire breaks, etc., to manage fires. Portland Bight, you have persons who are they have a fish sanctuary there. Persons are being trained in coral reef restoration, coral nursery, Arcabessa Bay doing the same thing. Several years around Jamaica, where they're restoring coral reef and wetlands. Note that 5 times, talk about blue carbon, 5 times as much organic carbon is stored by mangrove forests than in upland forests. So mangroves are very important. But what do we do in Montego Bay, other places on the North Coast?
Build hotel.
The hotels need hello. You all don't like. Can you imagine you go to the beach and you have to walk through mangrove forest to get there? No! Get rid of it. You're the first person going to complain that we need to get rid of mangroves. And the seagrasses as well. Nobody wants to walk with the sea edge. Yes?
I see that them instead of planting trees now in America, they're doing this cyber algae tree planting. Have you seen it?
Cyber algae.
Yeah, like them putting it in like the algae in like a glass.
Yes.
Okay.
They have those projects where algae is supposed to be able to trap the carbon, but that's not shoreline protection. That is real. So that is dealing with removing the carbon dioxide. But mangroves are nurseries for fish. The young fish go in there, and mangroves have many more functions than just trapping carbon dioxide. So it's so question. We're come to the end of the story. What will you do?
Do better.
So what is so Mr. Martin? So what is being done? Because even now in the clear, they're clearing the mangroves as we speak. Um, so what is being done? Address.
There is a sad reality that government has policy, and then the action of the government goes totally opposite to policy. So we're supposed to be planting mangroves, at the same time we're allowing persons to remove the mangroves. So there is a mix up. There's no, our actions are not aligned with our policy direction. We say we want to do something, it's almost like you saying, I'm going to be a better person, and as you walk down the road, it becomes money. So it's like,
But in the debate, how do you strike the balance? Because you want to have a big highway from Kingston to Mobile. In order to build that highway, there are a lot of trees that are going to have to
so when we're doing development projects under the NRC Act, a permit is required. I'm here in Jamaica supposed to have the pinnacle, these massive high-rise buildings, and to date we don't see the impact assessment. We don't know if one has been done. So the concern is, have we really considered the impact? Can we really put up those high-rise? Yes, it's a good concept. Wonderful. Housing, diversified housing, and wonderful. But the point is, can we really? What's the impact on sewage? Where are they going to release the sewage? What's the impact with all of these persons? The pressure with traffic. It's a whole lot of things you have to consider. You know. Is it feasible? Unfortunately, for political expediency, I'm not blaming government, but this is how we tend to operate. We shout, we're going to do this. And then the people behind the scenes are saying, oh, no mercy. Where is it going to work? How is it going to work? And they are forced to come up with some fix that don't normally work. And then, so unfortunately, there is an approval process. There's a process you're supposed to go through. Announce it, the development plan is put in place, the relevant impact assessment is done, and you look at it and say, okay, fine, these mangroves are too important, we cannot do anything here. Leave these areas alone. There's another area which is not as sensitive. Let's do it there instead. We don't do that. We tend to throw those reports out through the window, and the higher people say, go ahead, full speed ahead, even though we're having a problem. And persons who work in government are constantly frustrated that they're ignored. Nobody listens to them. In many instances. And they're forced to be implementing things that they know not going to work and that they're going to have problems later on. But we really have to come to a point, as I say, where the balance really is there are some areas that are not as sensitive. That's where we should be developing. And areas which are sensitive, we leave them alone. So we should have more. So the government is always saying that they have declared more protected areas in the short space of time than anybody else has. But at the same time, we are still losing. Even in the protected areas, where still a lot of damage is occurring. Because we're not enforcing. And sometimes government is the greatest challenge. We all just need to look at Rubicon in Kingston. Why do we still have that dump that is on fire? Down here we have the retirement dump. We have all of these dumps that are still not being managed properly. And it's causing serious hazard to community members and the whole system. So do you feel like you can do anything?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What can you do?
Do better.
So
It
that
starts
we
with
as
us.
university students now who are basically everyone is looking to us now for the innovations to fix the problems. Who do we hold accountable when our reports are not held to any standard or the ecology studies that we put forward to say that this area should be left alone and that area should be used instead? Who do we hold accountable when our voices are ignored?
In Jamaica, you have to, as they say, block road.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I think we should take Haiti's one, sir. You know, Haiti's resolution, man.
That was the first person. The second person will tell you we have official channels. Do you know that within communities we have what is known as CDCs, Community Development Committee. We have CDCs all over the place. The CDCs filter into the parish development committees. So the parish development committees, so through your CDCs, if you have a concern, you should be able to bring it to the councillor and the MP through your parish development committees. And yes, they may get tired of you, but I don't think we always see on the news stories where persons block road. We tend not to see on the news.
Why I'm blocking?
No, the stories where persons didn't block no road, but they worked through the process and got the issue resolved. And I threatened to make her kill you. And Elijah got to God and said, no, Elijah, run away. And God have said, wait, here on go.
Period.
And Elijah said, be tired. And God said to him, say, um, God said to him, it's all right. You tired? Flourish. But just make sure you appoint the next one. So Elijah took over. There are always people in the world who are doing good. There are always people in the world. So as much as you're seeing the world going to pieces, there are beautiful people like yourself that you need to find and network with. You would have never done the back.
Yeah, so things to discover that the salt water and the water kind of they come together now and salt water is taking over, right? Is there any research done to at least slow it down or any research done on how to actually preserve it or try to convert it back to fresh water?
Well, thank you for actually mentioning that because one of the things that the government has done, I think last year, year before, is that they've been pumping water into aquifers to store it. So that can help to reverse the problem. So instead of allowing, so when rain falls, a lot of it runs off to the sea. But what you can do is instead of allowing it to run off to the sea, you can pump it into the aquifers to replace and push off the seawater. So they're actually doing that. I think it's Innswood. I think it's Innswood is where they have a project where they have that first project and they plan to do others elsewhere. But good point, yes. So you see, all right. One of the things we always our backs to the wall. There is no hope. There's nothing that we can do. No. There's always a solution. And one of the reasons why governments nowadays, government said, okay, companies said we have to burn fossil fuels. There's no way. We can't do renewable energy. Government said, listen, if you don't switch to renewable energy by a certain time, you're going to get shut down. That forced companies to come up with creative ways of making renewable energy cheaper. When we are allowed to give excuses, so your paper is due tomorrow morning. Sir, I can't get a payment tomorrow because we just have too much things to go. Hello. If it's a honey tomorrow, you get zero. You see, if you recognize that when when tomorrow comes and you miss it on 1 week late, all three, you see, as long as that lecturer give you leniency, all 3 months down the road, paper not honey yet. When you see when the rules are fast and kept, you make a way. So a lot of times, our excuses occur because we're lenient.
So it's not that it's like you're saying United Nations is responsible for a lot of stuff, sir. But United Nations are turning a blind eye to also a lot of stuff because the same people in a power are like in charge of that are the same people where do a lot of damage.
Alright, so you speak a very true thing. It's very true. It's very true that the world is dominated by the big countries. What the US wants, what Russia, the country with veto power.
Yeah.
The country with veto power, no matter how if the 3/4 of the world are against something, they just veto it. So we understand that is life. That is how it works. But within our space, we can make changes.
Okay.
So yes, on the international scene, there are some things that are going on that don't make no sense. And you see them not doing anything about it. So there's a thing about having the wisdom to know what you can change and do something about. So we have to recognize the things that we can change and work on those. Because there's some things we can't change. We can't change the fact that Israel keeps getting away with killing our people. And the US keeps supporting them. That's fixed, set, cast in concrete. Although I heard that Israel in the US going against them. So I was like very interested to hear that there's actually somebody who is standing up against it and saying something. But yeah, we can. The world is not level, and we just have to realize that some things are not. We cannot fix certain things. But there are some people who are trying to fix it, and because there are some miracles that have happened. Some things miraculously get fixed after years. People get it sorted out. So it may appear as if it's not going anywhere, but sometimes not the right time, but some things may happen to make it become so vital that you can't ignore it anymore. So it has to be addressed. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Evan. It's an idea for the presentation today, so eloquently presented, and we see why you are considered experts in your field. I have a question. I wrote it down. when I saw the person to the boat of that. Not for the audience, but the
Answer generally. Huh? Answer generally. You can answer generally. You want to hear? There's a question, a serious no. If heats affecting turtles turn them to females, does heat affect the testicles of men?
Soy milk.
So back on pause. Sterility.
That soy milk affects how the gender of a male, at a tender age. That is why mothers shouldn't feed kids or males on soy milk.
Excellent. But we're talking about heat here. We're talking about heat here. They're the reason why the testicles rock out from the body.
Yeah, because that's
To remain cool. So you see when you're ready, tight up pants them.
Yes, man. Talk to them, sir.
The tight up pants.
It's not cancer at this time. It's tights at this point. Not a pants again. Tell them stop wear tights.
It can affect.
Sorry, Miss. You pour me the things and what you wear briefs do.
Okay, that's a very interesting.
Don't look at me in the tights.
Alright, at this time, we will call on Miss Brian Richards to do the vote of that.
Get them here. Get them here, y'all.
Get them rich.
like one.
It's a long selection there.
Oh.
And then we can hear.
You need to speak on?
Go to the back, go up the line.
Hello, everybody.
Good day, Kira.
Hello, my classmates and my admin staff. Hello, everybody. So, I'm honored to be here today to express our deepest appreciation to our distinguished speakers for their informative and inspiring presentation on climate change. Firstly, I would like to thank Mr. Evan Thompson on the screen. Thank you. So, thank you. Mr. Evan Thompson is a meteorologist and the principal director of the meteorological branch. Your insights into the science of climate change are invaluable, and your passion for this issue is contagious. A special thank you goes out to Mr. Raymond Martin, our very own lecturer here at UTech. Your innovative approach to delivering information in such a captivating manner is truly commendable. You're very funny, okay? So by actively engaging your audience, you have not only entertained us, but also imparted invaluable lessons that will undoubtedly last a lifetime. Because I was wrong and proud, saying that greenhouse gas is chipping away the ozone. Thank you for correcting me and informing the others. Okay. It is clear that we need to take action to address this issue, and your work is helping to raise awareness about the importance of doing so. And guys, it really starts with us, because if we do like little things to help combat climate change, it can work. I know they used to tell in a great ship that perfume and all of that affects the climate and it contributes to climate change. It does. But we maybe say, oh, it's such a small thing, not going to really change nothing, but it starts with us, Cause imagine if everybody ever stop use certain things, Anyways, we'd like to thank Streamline Media for skillfully capturing these enlightening moments in real time and allowing us to revisit and share them through the lens of your expertise. Your effort... Okay, Streamline Media, thank you. Okay, you're videoing everybody and them are going to see themselves and go, just watch it later, okay? Next, I'd like to extend our gratitude to our host, Dr. Gittins here, Adrian from the AC. Thank you for taking the time out to grace us with your warm presence. We hope you continue to make St. Vincent proud by being a beacon of hope. Your steadfast advocacy and strong voice on this important topic makes us all proud. Lastly but not least, Mr. Carton Henderson, the best math teacher ever. Thank you for your hard work and dedication that made this event possible, and we're all grateful for your efforts. Thank you again to all of our speakers for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. Your work is making a difference. But the most important people here, the audience, and the admin staff and the lecturers, thank you to everybody for coming out and participating. Thank you for taking the time out to sit down and be here and listen, and let's hope that everything that you've listened, you go out and you make a difference in the world. Okay, everybody?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Miss Danielle.
Hi, Jada. Normally, I'm the behind the scenes person, but I was forced this afternoon by Mr. Henderson. So, Mr. Raymond Martin, I guess you're in luck today because you're in yes, this one is for Evan Thompson and one for you. So, Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry. So, Mr. Martin, here you go, and thank you very much.
Okay.
And thank you to Mr. Thompson.
Thank you very much.
And now the end